All right, I'm assuming we're live, huh? What's going on?
Oh, I think so. We flipped spots this week. Look
Oh,
at me
yeah,
on
we
this side. This
are.
is weird. This is weird.
It is
I feel
weird.
like now I'm
It is
driving
weird.
the car over on this side. That's nuts. There we go.
Oh, look at Ethan. Look at Ethan
Woo.
taking care of my boy.
Appreciate it,
Uh,
Ethan.
yeah, as you can tell, I'm definitely in a different setting. We have flown into Minneapolis, Minnesota. I think I said that right.
Mhm.
And headed to see a good friend of mine, Mike Carlin, in Wisconsin, and hang out with him for the weekend. Maybe do a little snowshoeing and ice fishing or something.
Where are we at? Where are we at, Dustin? Let's. You got to let the people know.
Where are we at? Oh, what? Where are we at? We're at Applebee's.
That's it. That is
Yeah,
it. That's got to be our new sponsor there, man. That's awesome.
yeah, um, yeah, they should be. I tell you, man, it's good. They literally just brought a steak right across the screen here, so I had to take a few minutes and scarf some lunch down. Man,
That's good
flying made
stuff.
me hungry. Mhm. Anyways, we got a show that must go on, right?
Oh, always, always. I think we got an awesome show this
Yeah.
week. I'm excited.
We do, and the today's topic I'm excited about is one that I know that everybody can really relate to. We've
Mhm.
probably all been there. If you've hired anybody, most likely you can relate to this. And this is how to, the problem of differentiating you as the boss versus you as the friend. So when you're hiring, when you're starting out, it's a real personal connection, and we want to discuss that from all different angles. We want to just unpack like everything that has to do with that, and we know what it's like starting out, how that line can blur quickly, but we want to talk about that.
And sometimes you got an idea of what that line's gonna be, and then it changes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For me, I think this is one of my favorite topics so far because it's probably one of the biggest challenges for
Hmm.
in the business that we're in the people business. You know what I mean? We're
That's
making
right.
these connections with our employees, with our customers. Taking care of these cars, being in the people business and trying to make that balance. That's the hardest part of
Well,
the game.
and your employees are just an extension of you, and even if it's just
Mhm.
one, and you want them to be similar in the way that you handle things and do things. So, and it's inevitable that you make that connection. And if it's someone that's going to stick, usually you hit it off with them, right? And so then you have to do this juggling act of, okay, I'm the boss, but I also have made a relationship with you, and we're friends now. And so how do we define that line, and how do we keep from crossing it? I know I get asked all the time at trainings, how do we do that? How do I clarify or set those boundaries to where they respect me and my decision making, but we're also friends at the end of the day.
And I think sort of like what we talked about the last time, making that first hire, and now it's like,
Hmm.
okay, hey, you made that first hire, you made that
Hmm.
connection with the person. Sometimes you're busier than heck, and you've got to go and hire one, two, three, but you've got this connection with one person.
Yep.
And to speak to that point, I think the solution to that is being the same person every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
being consistent. The consistency is exactly what it takes, and making sure that you're setting expectations for them. But but it doesn't have to be like this, um, like driven by like iron fist. It can be
Mhm.
collective. You can decide things collectively, but at the end of the day, you're responsible.
Yeah, the word boss doesn't have to be that negative word. You know what I mean? It can be something where you've got great relationships with all your employees, managers, any levels that you're at. Um, but it's still making sure it's not a negative.
Yeah, and that's funny that you said that. Like, I've never really liked the term boss. Like, I never
No,
referred to
me neither.
myself as boss, and like that doesn't. I've had people call me that, and I'm like, I don't really get down like that. We're a team, and we do things together. At the end of the day, it is my responsibility. Every decision that's made there, I'm responsible for, but
Mhm.
everything's done collectively, and we're not it's not just a one decision leads all. It's collective. So and so here we are, right? We're talking about hiring, and we have to go, like, usually when you make that first hire, or even the second or third or fourth, those are either going to be friends or they're going to be
Mhm.
family,
Oh
right? So
God,
I know that
yeah.
we've all been.
That's
Have you actually hired a friend or a family member?
oh, many, many. And I actually wrote like you've got positives, you've got negatives with friends and families. Like again,
Hmm.
they walk in the door, you already have a built-in trust, right? And
Hmm.
you're going and you know the person, you sort of have certain expectations for that person. But the negative
Absolutely.
on both sides is that emotional connection to them that you
Yeah.
have outside of work. And it is a thing where, as in my younger days, you've got friends and you go in with a certain expectation, but no one's
Hmm.
you know what I mean? It's a totally different dynamic. And I have
Well,
moved away from that quite a bit.
yeah, and you do. I we have a family that works for me. There's hey, the waitress just drags her arm
You
across
just
the
gotta
camera.
love, you gotta love the live.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, impromptu, right? Yeah, come on to the
Mhm.
show.
Yeah.
No, so anyway, but like friends and family are kind of an obvious hire when you're starting out. It makes sense, and it's tough though because you are going to run into those times where you bump heads, and it's all about how do you figure out how to work through that. And I think you have to establish that early on.
Yeah.
One thing that I've always told people, and maybe this applies to friends and family, maybe not, but when I set somebody down in my office and when we hire like on a temporary basis. Like, okay, now I'll hire you, especially in the shop. We'll hire you for like 2 weeks, right? And you're
Yeah.
not even hired on. This is like like a work in, like your training slash seeing if you're going to make the cut in a sense.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And then I always tell them like, look, if in 2 weeks, if you hate it or I hate you, then we can just agree to disagree, and we're still going to be buddies at the end of it, and we move on. And so I think maybe setting those expectations very early, like, hey, if this doesn't work, we're still going to be friends, we're still going to be family, whatever that relationship may be, can still exist, even if this thing doesn't work or if we butt heads.
I just see that line in the sand with friends and family has to be that much,
It has to be
thicker.
definitive. Yes.
It's so definitive. So if
Yep.
I bring someone in, even if it's, let's say it's an employee that worked for us before, you know what I mean, that you
Mhm.
have a certain relationship with, that they've got a certain dynamic with you, but times are changed. The company's larger and maybe not able to have that same dynamic now. I'm going and making sure, hey, you fill out your stuff and here's who in charge, and really define those roles so they know where to go. And I think
Yeah.
that's something that's worked really well for us.
Yeah, and it just happens that way. Those are the people that are closest to you. You talk to them a lot. So when you're making those first few hires, generally speaking, it's going to be like a friend of a friend or something like that. But
Mhm.
establishing that quickly is imperative. And then growing a backbone. You got to be willing to step up and say, hey, this is my responsibility, and I am doing this. You don't have to be an asshole about it. Nothing says that you have to be an asshole in this thing. Just because you're assertive in a manner doesn't mean you have to treat them any kind of way outside of just clearly setting those expectations and saying when they're not met or if something's going wrong, you're responsible at the end of the day. So if you have to get serious about it, then that's just what you have to do.
And I know you touched on this point just a second ago of hiring like a
Mhm.
friend of a friend. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's almost a totally different dynamic because I actually, again, I do that. I actually encourage that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Because then it's okay for that, your employees, that group to have that camaraderie. That's great as long as those boundaries are set between you and them, and saying, hey, just because everyone's an individual. I think that's a really cool and interesting point as well.
Well, and I'm glad you said that too, because a lot of guys they're so scared to hire. Like, well, what if it doesn't work out, and people are scared to refer. But I'm like, you know what? What's the worst that
What if
happens
it
if it
does?
doesn't work
What if
out?
it
They
does
leave.
work out? Yeah,
Yeah. What if
but
it
at the
does?
same
Right?
time,
I think the
look at
the
it from the
good
good
way.
side. Yeah.
Exactly. So you can't be so scared to make a decision. I think when it comes to hiring, I definitely have a quick to hire, quick to fire mentality. So if I feel like that you fit in and that you will, you can add value and it's something that we could work out, then I'm bringing you on. I'm trying you out.
And I'm going to jump in and say that's probably my biggest weakness. You know what I mean? Because I
Uh huh.
probably do the opposite, right? That quick
Okay.
fire, it's
Mhm.
quick hire, quick to fire. Put it on a t-shirt, right? It's easy to say. It is
It's
so
easy
much
to say. It's
harder
hard
to
to
do,
do. It is
right? And
very
that's
hard
the
to do.
part of it. And I'm like, look, you can do this for 20, 30. You can do this as long as you want. But when you bring someone in, right, and you look for those characteristics, those personality traits,
Hmm.
you've got an idea of where you think they're going to go or where they're going to grow into,
Hmm.
and then you're like, man, maybe they take one step back, but you're like, hey, can you take 2 steps forward? And that's where that delay of that quick to fire comes in, because it's like, hey,
Well,
they're human beings coming in wanting to work hard. They've got some reason you hired them, and trying to still find that silver lining.
yeah,
That's
reality. Yeah, and you said it right with saying that sounds real easy and it
Mhm.
sounds real good, but reality is I'm not very good at that either. Quick to hire, definitely. Quick to fire is still tough. for me, I end up usually trying people in other positions. We've talked about it a few times,
Mhm.
moving
Yeah.
people around, but be quick enough to make a decision on something, right? Like,
Yeah.
like if it's not working here, where will it work somewhere else within the company? Do they bring some kind of other value? It does sound good, but it is, so guys sitting there going, man, I don't know, like, I tend to hang on to them a lot longer. We all do. We
Yep.
all tend to
Yep.
really give people the benefit of the doubt, and
But it goes back
and
to like
rightfully
your
so.
responsibilities there, right? As the owner, you're like, hey, look, I'm doing what's best for the company. You know what I mean? If it
Yes.
becomes something that's detrimental to the business, that's
Mhm.
where you step in and that's where you fire. You know what I mean?
You know,
If you see someone going through their own process of getting to where they're trying to get to, well, you know what? I'm going to be a little slower to fire. Honestly, it's
absolutely.
just real.
And I'm glad we're talking about firing, because this is all part of the hiring process. Inevitably, you're going to have to let somebody go. And one thing that I want to say, and this is something that I struggled with for a long time, is the fear of having someone that you need to let go, but you can't make it without them. And this is a serious thing for me, because I used to have concern when you built somebody up, they've done really good, but they just have these major issues or flaws or something that you just can't seem to work out, right? And
Yeah.
it's just, they're hurting the company as much as they help the company, and or sometimes more. And I'm not speaking to anyone specifically within our company. This has just happened over the years, right? And yeah, and so you have to come to that conclusion, and then you end up having to let them go. Just know that even though you think that it's impossible to survive without them, when you come to work the next day, or when you wake up the next morning, the relief that you get from making that decision is rewarding in itself, and you will figure it out. You got yourself to this point. I always tell people, we've got ourselves to this point. It doesn't stop just because somebody leaves. You keep going. So I want people to understand, guys that are watching this, if you have someone there that's just that's as equally bad, maybe, or more bad than is good, then don't be afraid to make that decision to separate, and see if and watch how liberating it is for the company.
The other part is, Dustin, is I think that, and I think we got a question coming in. I'm going to hold my thought. Go ahead and read that guy on. Let's see.
Yeah. So this is my buddy Billy Smith. Making the hard choices is
Billy.
never easy, but it has to be done at the end of the day in order for you to break the negative away from the business. And he is spot on, Billy Smith. You are absolutely right. And it's not easy. It's not easy, man, especially if it's a friend or family.
And you know what? Everyone's going to go through that process at least once. You know what I mean? Because there's no way to mentally prepare for that.
No, there's not. There's not.
But the one thing that's really worked well for me over the years is I'm in the mindset where there's an invisible timer over everyone's head, right? You remember those old egg timers that just are going to go off at some point?
Yep.
And when their clock goes up, whether they quit, whether they have to get fired, you see what I'm saying? No one's here forever. And getting in that mindset from the beginning, from hiring them, no matter how much potential, right?
Yep.
It's kind of just getting ready to know that there will always be an end.
Yeah, there is, and you don't think that when you're building, you're growing, you think everybody's going to be there forever, and you're doing things so much different than everybody else. And even I, like in my, in our companies, I feel like we do things differently. However, things run their course, things happen, people move on, people change,
and not always for the negative. People might
Absolutely.
make a change in their life for the positive, or move somewhere, or something happens, that's good, and that's never bad. You know what I mean? That's awesome. I always encourage that.
That's right. So like when you think about like recommending, because we got a lot of young detailers that watch this show, and they're going, okay, well, what do I do? Should I hire a friend? Should I hire a family member? Like, I think my opinion is absolutely, if they fit the job and they feel like they can do the thing, I think you absolutely hire them. And it's just about setting that expectation early, and absolutely establishing boundaries that said, that at the end of the day, this is my business and this is my responsibility.
The one thing that I'll push back a little bit on is that friends versus family is almost a whole different you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a different type of relationship than family.
Sure.
But that's the one thing that I'll be like, hey, look, if it's family, it's usually better to keep them out of the business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're never going to love it as much as you.
Hang on, I think my dad's commenting now. Now saying, Nick, you're cut off the show.
But you know what?
No,
At the same time, like, learning from my dad is something, where it's like, that's also invaluable. You know what I mean? It's also, there's definitely positives and negatives to both, but sort of differentiating friends from family is also something I think is important to keep in mind.
It is. It really is. Yeah. So I have go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
No. You go. I'm excited. What do we got?
So question here. Like, okay, you talk about like it's time to reprimand, say something went wrong. How do you handle that? Like, are you quickly to jump on somebody and correct them, or how do you handle that in your shop? Because it's tough when you want to be the guy that's being liked, right?
Immediate nanosecond. The second something goes bad, I don't care what it is. You know what I mean? I'm immediately there. I'll stop everything else in the day, and that gets addressed first, because leaving stuff to linger, that just it doesn't.
Oh, it's terrible.
Oh man, yeah. You don't want that little fire turn into a big fire. You
No,
know.
that's right. And nobody learns from this like waiting time, given time. You catch them in the moment. They can understand and grasp the seriousness of it. A lot of times, you're dealing with something expensive. Somebody does something and they may not have messed it up yet, but it's heading that way, and you're quickly to jump on them and say, "Hey, whoa, stop!" And let me explain what's going on. So you got to be quick about those things. Don't let things build up, because that when it builds like that, it just makes it 10 times worse.
And making that time again, that's that boss versus friend part of it, right? It's like,
Mhm.
look, you've got that person maybe has been with you for a long time. You're like, hey, I don't want to overstep, because you give them their responsibilities, and you know what I mean. And but you still have to make sure if that's something that's affecting the company, you know what I mean. That then you have to step in and cross that line and be like, look, this is how this has to happen. You know.
So a lot of our younger guys too. I know the question I get asked all the time is, how do you gain the respect? How do you
Mhm.
gain respect from, even if you hire older? Let's think about hiring an
Yeah.
older friend or an older family or an older person. Period. How to gain that respect? And I know that how I always done it was, I relied on my knowledge and making sure that I tried to know as much about whatever I was asking them to do as
Mhm.
possible. Now that worked early on. Now I just have to. I have my respect comes from my experience. But
Mhm.
but when I was starting, it was my knowledge, and I wanted to understand everything so that way I could direct and lead with confidence.
I agree with you 100%. Now, I've had the luxury of being younger for most of my time, so
Yeah. Yep.
it is a thing that I'm just a bulldog, and I'm going to go and work harder than everybody
Yeah.
else and gain the respect that way. Whatever hole you're in, you know what I mean, I'm going to dig it with you. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
it's that's how I always learned to gain respect. Now that transition happens, right? Now
Yep.
that if I'm
It's
older and I'm not able to be directly in that hole, I'll still let you
Mhm.
know. Like, if you need help, I'm going to be there for you. But it's now showing them with action, right? With improvements to the business, showing them, hey, Nick's working his ass off. Excuse my language there, but to
no,
make
no,
this
no, no.
business even better, and giving them tangible things that they can see of like, hey, yeah, this is why we work hard. You know what I mean?
Well, it starts with your back, right? When you're young and you're driving a company, everything's built off your back, and you're bringing people in. You're saying, I can work hard with you. I can
Heavy.
work,
It's
no
a
one's
heavy
going to out.
workload there.
It is. But then there's a point where it switches, because now, like, I want to hire people that know how to do these things better than I do, especially like in our
Mhm.
marketing and software. Like, I can't go in there and code next to my developer. Like, I can't go write code. So how
No,
do I
man. Yeah.
lead them? And so it comes from experience, right? It comes from, like, understanding goals. And I'm reading this book, and I knew I was going to draw a blank as soon as I went to quote it. But basically, it's like, setting these clear objectives and goals, and your job is just keep everybody laser focused on that. Don't let them, because
Yeah.
there's all kinds of distractions. But don't let
Always.
them don't let them get distracted. You lead by these, this goal and this direction. And so, as you evolve, like, gaining the respect from just pure hard work is there, but also understanding and keeping people aligned in on the way. And that happens with the first employee. You should be showing people your vision, and trying to get them to buy into that vision, because that's what you're going to need long term.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's like, look, if you
Mhm.
say that you're going to be going somewhere with that vision, well, make sure that there's certain things like, hey, 1 month out, 3 months out, 6 months out, you know what I mean? We, that they can see that they're
Check
like,
in,
yeah, you
yeah,
know what?
like that
That,
that
that,
qualifies it.
that
Yeah.
vision's real. Yeah.
Yeah, so
But
like a measuring tool, and that's exactly what you got to do. Give them some way to measure and see how the hard work is paying off.
mhm, I agree.
Uh, so like, I know one thing that I always dealt with at my shop was being the bad guy, and you tend to be the bad guy all the time. Like, if you
Mhm.
as the company grows, everything kind of comes to your desk as you the bad guy, and I hated that, right? And
Yeah.
so I would always try to position myself in a way that I didn't have to be that bad guy all the time. Maybe putting a
Okay.
manager in a certain position. And we're talking about a little bit larger company, because when it's just a couple of you guys, guess what? You're going to be the good guy and you're going to be the bad guy. It doesn't matter. But
And every guy in between.
Every guy in between, you're going to wear all the hats. So, but as it does get larger, you can position yourself in that where you're not always that bad guy, and you lean on your managers for that. And I was going to ask, how do you handle that?
Well, again, I think the good cop, bad cop is going to be something that you're going to play to your strength. You know what I mean? I know that I'm a good cop because I'm there and I'm going to find those silver linings in every person, and I want stuff to work out and I want them to grow. And I'm trying to do all these different things that are positives. And it's hard for me to take that hat off and then go be the bad cop as well, even though you have to sometimes. But trying to position the company where, look, you've got a manager in place. You've got someone else that's going to be there doing a little bit more of the bad cop. Not that they like it, but it's part of their responsibilities and handling, hey, scheduling, a guy calls off, whatever those little things are that would get, that would really fall on my shoulders before, don't fall on my shoulders and doesn't let me get a negative, reaction there from that.
That's right. And one thing that Madison, my marketing directors, kind of made me famous for in our place is the compliment sandwich. And so when you're going to give, like you're really going to like point out something somebody did wrong, you start out with, here's what you did right. And in the middle of it, it's like, here's what all you messed up. And then you always end with, but you can do better, or but you did this okay. And
the bread is always good. It's like stuff in the middle there.
Yeah, and that's not to be confused with the shit sandwich. The shit sandwich is what you have to eat when a customer is giving you a fit, and you just have to just sit there, grin and bear it. That's the shit sandwich. The compliment sandwich is for the employees.
And then you wait till that sandwich hits the fan. Then you're in some trouble. Then there's a whole bunch of cleanup. You got to get everybody all back on board. But what it is? That one common thing we're talking about is that communication. You know what I mean? It really comes back to that communication and being like, look, they already know if something went wrong or they did something that was incorrect. Me going to them and playing that good cop role of being like, okay, why? Is there something going on? You know what I mean? I can play that role a lot better than that disciplinary side.
Yeah. Oh, me too. Look, one thing that I always focused on, you mentioned communication, is our meetings. We have morning meetings that we do in the detail shop. They're stand up little kind of shop, like a toolbox talk, meeting, and we go over our numbers. We go over.
I like that name. That's got to go on a shirt too. Toolbox talk.
Toolbox talk, right? Yeah. I got to give my dad props on that one. I heard him say it the other day. Yeah, and I was like, okay, I like it. I'll go with it. But we've been having those meetings since the beginning of time. I mean, when I had a couple guys out there, but I used that to motivate them. I always used that meeting to fire my guys up. It was a great time for them to communicate about problems, broken tools, things that are going on in the shop that I may not be aware of. Of course, now that's trickled down to my shop manager, but communication and setting those things up early. So no matter what, if it's just one or two of you, don't feel ridiculous, bring them together for 10 minutes, use that time, because once the headphones go in and the vacuums get turned on and the polishers are turned on, communication's over, and
a little bit of getting in the rabbit hole. You give your hand signals. You know what I mean? Is the car done? Is it good? It's okay, good. Okay, I'll call him. Okay.
Yeah, right. No, and I always loved I remember back when it was just me and a couple of guys, and the dancing act that we performed around the car. It never said a word, but everybody knew where the other one was, and things just happened. And those were the good old days, right? Now it's like you pull your hair out because you're dealing with all kind of stuff, but don't, take advantage of that time. Like when you're starting out and you're getting going, set these things in place, because this will be your company's, this will be, the way that y'all do things and like what you'll be proud of, and the things that you set now, not that you can't adjust them later. It's the culture. I couldn't think of the word. The company culture is created when there's just a few of you, and it carries on. So don't be afraid to set those things up early when there's just one or two of you, and use it time to communicate. Use it as a time to understand and relate to them. So you kind of kill those things before they start, the bad anyway.
And again, one of the things I'm most proud of is when, again, been in business 15 years now. It's like you think of some of those original OGs, right? You call them the OGs, the first couple guys you had, and they moved on, or they moved, or different stuff happens. Yep. But then they all of a sudden reappear. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it never fails.
Man, Nick, I freaking loved working. You know what I mean? You keep those relationships, and it's still that line, right? Friend versus boss.
It is.
But it's like, man, building those honest, respectful relationships with people, you keep them for life, man, for real. It's something where it's crazy.
You do. And, you know, I want to say it again because I've been in this situation so many times, and really in the detailing world, you know, you get somebody that's really good and that's great, and you think that that's the backbone of your company. But let me remind you that you're the backbone of your company. You're the reason they're there, and you're the reason that they are doing so good. And if you put them in that position, you can put anybody, you know, you can put others in that position, and not taking away from great employees, but you can't let them have so much control over your mind and the trajectory of your company. You have to understand if it's time to go, then it's time to go, and know that life goes on.
Those memories, though, those ones always stick a little bit longer, though, right? Because I've been through that 4 or 5 times. You know what I mean? You're like, man, that guy, man, if I could have kept him, my life would have been easier, right? It would have made my life easier than having to go through this different process. But now you get to do it again, and you get to do it better. And that's sort of how I sort of try and look at it.
It's the night before that gets me. The night before, if you know that you're going to have to let him go, and you're like, man, like you just, the knot that comes up in your stomach, it's never fun. And I want to tell this because I know there's guys out there that probably have somebody working for them going, how do I do it? And look, there's no fun way to do it. But let me promise you one thing. When you set somebody down across from you and you start to list out what the problems are, they already know. Chances are they've been waiting on it. You probably kept them longer than they expected to be kept anyway. So don't feel like they're just completely oblivious to that. They know too. And usually you end up doing both of you guys a favor, both of y'all a favor, if you go ahead and cut it. And I don't want this to be negative. Like I don't want that to feel like that's all it's about, because there's so much good, and we've had so many employees be great. Go ahead. But I just didn't want it to be negative.
No, because I was gonna jump in and say, like, again, that's kind of like.
I lost you.
Both the call circles. You got me there?
Yeah, I lost you. Say that one again, Nick. I'm sorry.
But again, that's sort of that firing side. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
Testing. You know, yes, this is a live show. This is a live show. You never know what can happen.
Exactly.
But I know you sort of spoke to like that aspect in terms of if you had to fire someone, right? You had to let someone go. But I think it's also important to talk about the other side when they quit, right? Because you invest a lot of time and you invest a lot of effort and energy into trying to help people. And when they decide to walk away for whatever the reason, good or bad, it is something that can definitely be something that stresses, or you're there that night after, right? Instead of the night before, you're there the night after.
It hurts,
you know what I'm saying?
Man. It's emotional. You're emotionally connected, but you know,
absolutely.
and someone that works for me, she always brings this like you're always quick to just leave the house burning behind you and just move on, and really, you know, you're not. Like maybe you just handle it better. That's Chelsea. She's sitting beside me, by the way, that always says that. And so she says, you just like a burning house that's just gone behind you and you just forget about it. And I was like, no, but I owe my full concentration to the other 40 people that are here right now, and that's my responsibility. And if I get caught looking in the rearview mirror, then we're going to hit something. You know what I'm saying? So we have to just move on, and it sucks, and it's
and you know, all 40 people are looking at you like, hey, is Dustin even going to flinch? Right?
Right. Yeah.
You can't flinch. It's like,
no, you can't. You can't.
You're gonna go. You're gonna go forward and just lead everybody to something that's better and greater and that they're excited about.
One thing that I've been focused on too lately is documenting when as you're growing, once you know, even starting out hiring, if there are issues going on, document them. If they're showing up late, if they're, you know, doing things that are against your policy, which you need to have some form of policies down. But document this stuff, because when it comes separation time, it's really nice to be able to go to this and say, hey man, look, here's what's happened. You know, obviously you know about it, but it's written down, and you hate to go to the legality side of it. I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole right now. But just to have your kind of your facts together, so that if it does get a little bit argumentative, you say, look, you know, here's what happened, and you got some facts there that you can go on, and it's going to make you feel better. So that's one thing that we're focusing on better at my office now. I was always like, I'll just remember it, and when it comes up, it comes up. No, do you never remember that stuff when you need it?
And you've always got the text messages. You know what I mean? That was sort of I am awful at documentation. I'm just going to be honest. You know what I mean? like to bring out a write up. I'm like, man, I'm not that guy. You just
I know
don't do it.
it's an
You know what I
awful
mean?
feeling anyway.
I
Yeah,
hate, yeah. I'm like, what am I gonna do with this piece of paper of why they came in late or whatever it is? It's just
I know.
it's not necessarily gets to the core of the problem. I absolutely agree with you that there is huge value in doing it, but you still got to make sure that hey, hey, one second. But it's like
It's a live show, right?
It's a live show, man. We've got the arm coming in with the theater. We got the this is what it's about, man. It's a good time.
It is.
But yeah, it's just trying to make sure that you're there for your employees from start to finish, and all those extra little processes. Work on them. Try and keep getting better. Try and keep improving.
That's right.
But it's not all going to come together in one day.
Well, look. I'll tell you what, Nick. Let's sum this up. Let's kind of wrap it all up in a big ball. New guys starting out. You're going to come across a family member, a friend that's going to want to work for you, or that you're going to want them to work for you. And the overwhelming message that I'm hearing from you and that I know is to set the boundaries early, set the expectations, inspect what you expect. What that means is if you expect them to do something, check on them behind them. Don't let things fester. Don't watch them mess up and you correct. Inspect what you expect, but making sure that you set those boundaries and expectations early.
Oh, 100%. And the one thing is like now, as you start to grow and you're that larger company, sort of try and play to your strengths. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Being that boss, being that friend, play to your strengths, understand both sides of it, right? Whether that is good cop, bad cop, whether that's, flip it. Maybe you're better at being the bad cop. You know what I mean? Whatever that may be for you, take a look at yourself and be like, look, this is what I'm going to be really good at for this part of my business. And making sure you can put in a process that'll help, not
and document everything. Document everything. Yeah, it sucks. I know. I hate it. It's uncomfortable. It's ridiculous. But if someone shows up late, just write it down. Make a note of it. Ask them to sign it so they're aware. I promise you, when you start doing those things, you'll see less of it too.
See, I gotta step up the game. I gotta get on Dustin's level.
No, man. Hey, look, we're just getting better at it. Don't say as I was it. Don't do as I say. Do as I don't do as I do. Do as I say. That's totally this right here. So. Look, man, it's a great show as always. Exciting. Get out here and chat
You got these reels coming out on Instagram. You just want the best parts of it.
Yep. Shout out to Nick for that. Appreciate you, helping our team.
I don't get that credit. That's Ethan puts that together, man. Let's give him his props, man.
We have a strong team, man, and appreciate all the help that you coming on here. And we'll see you guys next week.
Next week.